Technology is constantly advancing and changing the world around us. One of the fastest advances in technology over the past decade is the internet, and in particular the revolution of the social networking websites. It is the #1 activity on the web and is changing the way we communicate with others.
But is this a gift or a curse? In schools around the world, students have been so addicted to these sites that they have been using it during classes. We went on a search for the truth. We interviewed dozens of students and teachers from Middlefield Collegiate to really determine if students are addicted to social networking and how it affects their school lives. This library is like any other, a place where students can study and catch up on notes. Or is it just a place where students abuse the Wi-Fi system and use social networking sites? We walked around Middlefield Collegiate to ask students how much time they spend using social networking inside of the school.
Oh, just loud.
2 hours.
About half an hour.
About 3 hours.
More than 4 hours for sure.
30 minutes.
20 minutes. An hour.
2 hours.
As you can see, every student we asked had an answer, and there wasn't one person who did not use social networking inside the school. We interviewed a fellow teacher of MCI, Mr. Morton, to acknowledge how he feels about students using their phones in class.
It's hard to believe when I started here at Middlefield about 10 years ago, cell phones pretty much didn't exist. They did, but they're very expensive. Kids just didn't have them. There was a time when kids had pagers, but today, and it seems this year more so than last year, maybe it's because I'm teaching mostly grade 11s, but it seems like every single one of my students has a cell phone, and that cell phone is almost an extension of themselves. So I don't know whether it's sort of an addiction or it's sort of a compulsion, but I have students that just cannot leave their cell phone alone for any more than, say, 5-10 minutes, that they're almost drawn to check for texts or to check for messages in any sense. Is it a distraction? Absolutely. Is there a way to harvest it and harness it maybe for good in the classroom? Maybe. I haven't figured it out. I think that very often if you speak to a student and they tell you that they're texting 400 or 500 times a day, I would have to question what's in those texts. And I think most of the time the texts that they're receiving and they're sending are really pointless and meaningless and pretty much a waste of time.
How do you think the teachers feel about us using that during their classes? Oh, my teacher hates it. I got caught one time and she took away my phone for like a week. And
Yeah, that happened to me like 7 times.
I just don't like it. I like the fact that they tell you to do it, like to post homework and whatever on it, but when you're using it just to socialize, they get all mad. Well, why you're on Facebook, or why you're on Tumblr, or why you're on Twitter. Like, why can't we just do what we want, you know?
Out of the respect for the students, we decided not to record them revealing their marks. However, they agreed to tell us their mark off of camera. 8 out of 10 students interviewed had a total average mark of 68%. If the average mark for kids are so low, how come cell phones are even allowed in class to begin with? After all, they are the #1 source to access social websites.
Unless it's part of a lesson, like in some courses where you're teaching communication technology, that's part of the lesson, it's fine. But I find that a lot of students waste their time checking their emails, their web pages, instead of doing schoolwork. For this lab, we were hoping that the school will allow us to cut off Facebook, because there's so many students spending much time on Facebook than doing work. So for classes, I think I don't like it.
It depends on how they're using it. Sometimes with Wi-Fi now, and only a couple computer labs, using a cell phone in class to do research and to get on the Moodle and do that stuff can be great and help their performance. If they're using their cell phone to check their email and talk to a class or text to a friend, then it means they're not paying attention to what's going on in class, and it generally does show itself as a habit that's ongoing and has a negative impact on their overall progress in the years. Yeah.
With that said, how do teachers deal with students who don't use their electronics for educational purposes?
Have I ever kicked anyone out for using it? I don't tend to sort of kick kids out. I've taken phones. I think that's sort of my strategy. I have one student who's really obsessed with his phone, and we have a deal that he has to turn off the phone before he enters the classroom. One day he had it on. He was using it. I took it. I put it in my back pocket. This thing buzzed in my back pocket pretty much every 2 minutes for the rest of the class. And of course he's having trouble focusing in class and doing his work because his phone keeps going off every 2 minutes, and that's an issue. So my strategy is I tend to sort of take the phones, or I force them to actually turn it off. They'll put it away, but actually turn it off.
I'm actually really happy to say that the students here are much better than other schools I've taught at. Especially, not so much with the social media in terms of using things like Facebook in class, but the texting and inappropriate use of a cell phone has been an ongoing problem in other schools that I've been at, and so it has become a disciplinary issue.
The only place where social media isn't used inside the school is during gym classes, where students are kept entertained with physical activities instead. In a nutshell, it all started with one bright idea, and a new era began. The rapid evolution of technology took the entire globe by storm. Perhaps the biggest surprise is the fact that people thousands of miles away could contact one another with the click of a mouse. Yes, a new age is upon us. Ever since the invention of the internet, social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and more have changed human lifestyles forever, particularly the lives of students and teachers. It's a back and forth battle that perhaps no one can win, but it'll be interesting to see what the next internet obsession will be. This is The Addiction of Social Networking, a documentary by Lukshan, Osama, and Umaesh.